Um, so welcome everybody to the Tuesday, October 10th, Working Group LTS Biweekly Meeting. My name is Jeremy and I'll be the host today. We have, I think, 2 open discussion items on the agenda. If anybody has anything they'd like to add, feel free. Also, if anybody is new to this meeting and would like to introduce themselves, feel free to do that now.
I've not joined before. I'll say hi real quick. I'm Xander. I work at Microsoft with Jeremy here, and involved in various places, SIG release, SIG contributs and such. But yeah, just jumping in to see where there's room to help out, and excited to work with y'all.
Awesome. Welcome, Xander.
Welcome.
All right. With that, we can jump into our open discussion items. I think, Scott, you had some observations from Red Hat's lifecycle that you wanted to go over that we didn't get to last time, so I bumped you to today, if you want to kick it off and take us away with that one.
Yeah, I just clicked to share my screen, but it
oh,
won't.
Sure. Yeah, let me...
I'm just going to share the doc, so...
Yeah,
anyone.
I'll make you a co-host. You can share.
Okay.
You should have the bits now.
All right. First time sharing in Zoom, so let me get this adjusted. You guys see the doc?
Pieces of it, mostly black. We see the title.
Oh.
If it's just the doc, one of us can share it too. If it's
Yeah.
having trouble.
Yeah, that's probably easier.
Okay, yeah, I can do it.
You don't even get to say next slide.
All right, let me share. All right, is that coming through okay?
Yes.
It is. All right, so I won't read the whole doc. Folks can read it at their leisure. It should be shared to the world. But I will go over a few pieces of context. OpenShift, we ship the Z-Stream or patch release either every week or every other week. We assert that you cannot upgrade from, if you're upgrading from an older miner to a newer miner, you don't upgrade through one that is potentially produced earlier than where you are now. So you won't regress by upgrading into a version that, imagine if you upgrade, say, from Cube 127.9 to Cube 128.0, that .9 might have fixes that .0 didn't have. So we assert that you can't do that through an update graph system. And then also, like, OpenShift is a big platform, and there's an even larger ecosystem around it. But the core release payload is something like 50 operators, includes all the cloud integration bits and pieces based on whatever cloud you're using. That is all shipped as one monolithic release, and so you don't update your cloud controller manager separately. You just click the button and say, I'm going to upgrade either to a new miner or to a new Z-Stream. OpenShift has a 1-to-1 mapping with Cube upstream version. So our 4.6 is Cube 119, 4.7 is 120, etc. And then we generally ship 3 to 4 months after upstream GA. There have been efforts to whittle that down, but I think we're so far behind at this point that we have to think about, well, what does that mean for customers if we try to catch up? Are we going to ship 2 releases a week apart or something like that? Or, what are the implications for them? So that's where we are now, and that's probably where we'll stay for a little while.
Well, one question before you go on. That talks about OpenShift GA versions. Is there like a preview version or early testing version that's closer to the open source release? I'm just curious.
Yeah,
If you-
there are, and so we have a 128 version that we will ship as a GA version in February, but we on a sprintly basis, we have sprints that last 3 weeks. We do produce a build and we do put it out in the world and into our candidate channels. One thing I didn't mention about the graph is there's basically GA channels and then there's a candidate channel. And in our candidate channel, you will find engineering candidates, which is, you know, when we're doing our core development work, and then we pivot over to release candidates once we've finished all the feature work. But like the Cube 128 release, that's already in 415 engineering candidates at this point in time, and that's available to the world.
Okay.
And so the real point here is we have embarked on trying to meet our customers' long support lifecycle needs. We started that, I guess, back in what would have been Cube 119 with 4.6. And so here I'm sort of going through the sort of 3 distinct iterations that we've done for our lifecycle. Basically, when we shipped 4.6, we were like, hey, this is EUS and we're going to support it for 24 months. And we didn't say anything else. We didn't say when the next EUS version would be. We didn't say, you know, what the cadence for that would be. We didn't say, we didn't amend the life of non-EUS versions. So at the time, that was just whatever N-2 was. So it wasn't strictly like calendar based. It was just whenever the next release, whenever the third release shipped, a non-EUS version would become EOL. And so after that was sort of like not clear and people had a lot of questions, we then followed that up with a little better defined life cycle. And we said, well, you know, we don't really have a great plan for, you know, upgrading across huge strides. I think the original intent when they declared 4.6 EUS is that something like 4.10, so 4 releases from there, would be the next EUS version. We didn't think that we would be successful. The engineering teams didn't think that we would be successful in helping customers move across that stride of releases. So we sort of reset and said, all right, well, we're just going to extend the life cycle for all of them to 18 months. 4.6 retained its 24 months, but all releases after that got 18 months. And then we did this thing that we called EUS to US upgrades, which basically just uses the kubelet version SKU to prevent updating your workers twice. So as you move from 4.8 to 4.10, you still apply 2 updates, but you pause your worker updates before you do that process. And then when you're done, you unpause them. And so they go directly from 4.8 to 4.10. Once we had everything at 18 months and then just that differentiation as far as the upgrade procedure.
Can I interrupt you? I'm sorry to butt in. While we're still on the V2 version, this is saying every other release was EUS?
Yeah,
right?
correct.
Okay. So does that means if you keep your control plane and nodes on the EUS version until like the very end of its 18-month lifetime, then you would have to upgrade the control plane through a non-EUS version that was already out of support. Is that right?
In
to
this
get to the newer version?
In this specific case of 4.6, because it was 24 months, then yes.
No, just in general.
Well, that's why we moved them all to be 18 months.
Oh, I thought
from that point forward.
Even numbered minor versions.
They actually had the same life cycle. It was just the upgrade workflow that we sort of encouraged people.
Okay, all releases are 18 months.
Yeah.
But the automatic upgrade flow jumps kubelets over the minor versions, or from minor version. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And that lasted for a while until people said, well, we really want 24 months. And so then in January 2023, we followed that up by saying, all right, well, now the EUS versions are 24 months and the non-EUS versions are 18 months. And so that gets us back to the problem that you were citing, Jordan.
Okay.
You know, if we're releasing every 4 months, there's like a 2-month window there where we basically just have to continue shipping the non-EUS version in order to make sure that the update graph, you know, is contiguous and they don't potentially upgrade through a version that is older. You know, we are, you know, continuing to look at the life cycle as it evolves and as people use it. But I think, you know, having gotten to 24 months, this is probably where we'll stay for a while. So I guess the main thing is at this point, we have an alternating life cycle. The odd numbered versions are supported for 18 months. The even numbered versions are supported for 24 months. And that is not, you know, it's some of the takeaways here. It'll be a little bit difficult to discern whether that's happening because of the alternating life cycle that we have embarked upon, or simply because we've extended the life cycle. So my key takeaway, the first one, you know, because of that alternating life cycle, the non-EUS releases have seen considerable decline in utilization. The first one that we had was off about 25%. And the second and third one, since we made this change, they're both down about 40%. And we hope that it'll sort of stabilize there and it won't get any worse. Because of that, you sort of pick winners and losers when you have features that are shipping in every single release. The features that ship in the non-EUS releases see deferred usage, which means that, you know, it also defers when customers have problems with it and we fix it. So that creates a little bit of a pain point. And also it creates pressure for us to continue backporting both more bug fixes, but also features, because customers say, well, I only use EUS releases, so I'm not willing to upgrade to the next minor version to pick up a feature. And then, you know, it creates additional tension amongst those customers that can only upgrade, you know, at one point during the calendar year, because they're potentially upgrading into a version that is now, at the time they do it, like 8 months old versus 4 months or less. And so
I guess if we have 3 releases a year and you're on a tick-tock schedule, that means it's not even a consistent time every year. It's like
it's going to vary.
Sliding time window. Okay,
yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so we're evaluating like if we want to stick with every other, what we want to do there.
So can I ask a question real quick too?
Sure.
Do you do feature backports to the EUS releases? Like what defines what an EUS release is for you? Is it just the longer support, or is it longer support plus it's constrained and like you're very specific about what you take back to it?
We don't make any specific rules, but given the tension that's created by more customers want more features backported EUS, we tend to do more. But we don't try to engineer towards something like doing the riskier changes on non-EUS releases and then keeping EUS releases, you know, less riskier. We just, you know, features go in when they go in, and it goes like that. Any other questions? Okay. When we started extending the life cycle, we saw sort of the middle maybe drop out of the system, where, you know, like certain customers, they're very cloud savvy. They have workloads that tolerate, you know, rolling updates very well. So those customers tend to be, you know, they may not upgrade the day that we ship something, but they tend to upgrade like on a cadence of every 4 months or so. And so, you know, we would have people that were leading the pack, and then basically sort of, you know, once you got past the leaders, sort of things were flat amongst the other releases that were supported. Once we got to a much longer life cycle, the sort of middle there dropped out. So we had people that kept up with things and they can update. And then we had people that basically tried to update as infrequently as possible, and they sat on the older releases. And so that, you know, the versions that were sort of in the middle saw a drop in usage until they, you know, became the older releases. So people just basically shift all the way to the end and then update as necessary. And you know, really when you're only supporting something for 12 months, you can't like see that separation. But once you start supporting it for 24 months, you start to see that separation. And I think one of the things that, go ahead.
When you say like update as infrequently as possible, like once they reach the end of the 24-month window, as infrequently as possible becomes the same as the leading edge, right? It becomes every 4 months, right?
Yeah, but and some people will try to like apply multiple and so they'll get back towards the middle or towards the head. But most of them are just staying in the most conservative versions, or most people that, you know, aren't leading are staying in the most conservative versions. And that sort of gets to the next point is like, when you write down with support for 24 months, I feel like all of our customers have assumed, oh, I can stay on one version for 24 months, update, and then stay on the next version for 24 months. But that's not how it works when you have serialized upgrades and you have difficulties helping people upgrade across many, many versions. You know, if you have 24 months, even with just the 3 releases a year, that's 6 versions. I don't think a lot of customers are going to be successful in, you know, upgrading across 6 minor versions in a weekend, unless they do like a cluster migration. And it maybe it was a mistake not to like explicitly state that, but certainly all of our customers sort of assumed that that was the case. And so now I think like I like that this group is focused on update friction and things, at least amongst customers that will upgrade in place. But as that stride gets bigger, you know, you start encompassing external dependencies like, you know, your virtualization platform, vSphere or whatever, your storage appliances, your load balancer. Those systems might have to be updated in the middle of this entire scheme to go from a, you know, 6 minors old to the latest, and it gets, you know, like exponentially more complicated to update across a wider stride. We haven't observed any significant change in lifecycle adherence. It's not like as soon as we started offering 24 months, everyone stayed within the 24 months. We find largely like people that are going to write it out, they basically wait until it's EOL and then apply their 2 updates or whatever. And they tend to do that like after it's actually EOL. So we see like a very rapid decline in use within the 90 days after something goes EOL, as they sort of move in mass to the next version. And then just reviewing bug data, the second half of the life cycle, very few customer-driven defects are opened and resolved. We're essentially just doing security response and then, you know, fixing 1 or 2 things when customers drive new workload to an existing cluster and bump into some problem that they never had in the past. And that, you know, so overall, I think we, at least for the 2 releases I looked at, we only had about 1/8 of the total number of bugs got fixed in the second half of the 24 months. So that's what I've written down. If anyone has questions, happy to answer.
Yeah, Rita had a question in the chat actually. So how do components running on top of Kubernetes get updated and shipped for the extended support?
So OpenShift has like an operator catalog, and we have tried to push the sort of layered products, which are maybe bundling of multiple operators into an offering that Red Hat makes. We have tried to push them to support the longer life cycle, but it hasn't become mandatory or anything like that. So we definitely, we advise that people before they embark on an EUS to US upgrade, they update all their operators to whatever the latest is, and then upgrade their cluster, knowing that potentially in the middle, depending on the support of all the individual operators, they may have to upgrade some of those in the middle. So we've tried to work with people to make sure that they can continue supporting things for 24 months, and generally a lot of ISVs they can make sure that they have a version that works with the version of OpenShift that's up to 24 months old. So, but they may have to do something like update to a later minor version of that operator or something like that. And most of our customers have been fine with that.
Do your EUS versions and your non-EUS versions have that same catalog, or is there a more restricted set of things for the EOS versions?
It's not specifically restricted there, but every minor version does have a unique catalog, because some operators actually only support like one release, and then they'll sort of tolerate the next release, but you should update as soon as you get there. So they're essentially they're 1-to-1 plus a little bit of skew.
The last comment about there's very few customer driven defects open and resolved, is that I'm trying to reconcile that with the like pressure to backport features. So like they're not finding issues in those versions as much as in the second year, but they are still asking for features to be taken back. Do those bring in issues with them sometimes?
To be clear, we still do very few feature backports, and we try to make sure
there's
that
pressure, but you resist it. Okay.
that there's pressure, and then that pressure also tends to come like in the first half of the life cycle also. So it's not like someone sits on the version for 12 months and suddenly says they want a feature from something newer. Generally, if they do that, that's a pretty clear no. Like we do
there's an 8-month lag. So like 8 months later, there's another EUS version that they could jump onto if they wanted features. Okay.
Yeah. So I guess it extends like the phase at which someone could say I want a new feature from basically 4 months to 8 months, and we'll try to make reasonable efforts to accommodate those requests in that first 8 months or so. But once you get beyond that, it's generally pretty hard to motivate a feature backport. So I think like the main thing that I think I would suggest is, for a community project, I don't think it makes sense to pursue the alternating lifecycle where potentially one version is supported significantly longer than maybe the other two, or something along those lines. Because I think that the challenges that creates are significant, and even with very minor differences in our life cycle, seeing a 40% drop off, and all of this is like everything continues to grow. It's just the release in between, in non-EUS compared to the previous release, which was the US, is used 40% less. Well, cool. That's all I had, unless anyone else has questions, and feel free to reach out on Slack. I'm there if anyone has questions afterwards.
This is actually sort of related to some work I was doing, getting data about regressions in backports in some of the Kubernetes stuff, which I realized would probably be relevant to this group. So I can queue that up for next time if you want to talk about it. But I'm curious how you have managed the risk of backporting stuff, like decisions about what to backport and what you've seen in terms of regressions for backports that are taken back. It seems like the people who are on the EUS are wanting stability, and that is in tension with like the desire to take feature-ish things or like bigger bug backports back to those. if those regress anything, which we see happen a lot in Kubernetes actually.
Yeah, we I think broadly we just trust the engineering teams, and we have, you know, CI systems to look for as much of that as possible, and we do have a pretty robust. Anytime that something gets into a release and regresses, we have a pretty robust RCA system to chase that down and say, how did this get in? You know, what test are we going to write to make sure this never happens again? So we just try to make sure that it doesn't happen. And we definitely, you know, like when you're doing a, you know, 1/8 the number of bug fixes in the second half, that sort of naturally tapers off pretty quickly.
No one else has a hand up, so I'm going to keep asking questions.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, Rita just said, what type of policy do you have around reporting and patching CVEs for end-of-life Kubernetes? Oh yeah, so are you taking Kubernetes fixes back to older Kubernetes releases, or is this like your customer reported issues and scanner found CVEs, base images, things like that?
Yeah. So a lot of this, you know, we ship on top of RHEL, so we pick up all the fixes that RHEL provides. We do every CVE that is reported against supported Kubernetes versions, we have to evaluate for the older releases, and we have to sort of chase those back and figure out. And then a lot of this is, you know, Go toolchain maintenance as well. That's I haven't done any in-depth analysis, but I feel like at least half of the CVEs that we faced are just part of the, you know, Go runtime. And so we, you know, we do the same thing there. We monitor all the currently supported versions. And, you know, anything that does pop up, we may potentially have to backport.
Okay.
And I'm just curious, have you had any CVEs reported for older versions that EUS has to support?
I don't have data on that.
Okay.
You're talking about like someone reporting something specific to a version that's only,
Right.
yeah.
That we no longer see an upstream, for example.
Yeah, I'm sure we have.
Okay.
But I don't have the data on that.
I had a question about clients or integrations, controllers, what have you, that are not bundled with the OpenShift version, but are instead trying to use a single version to support all of the currently supported OpenShift versions.
We
So-
have run into like Helm only
Okay.
supports certain version SKUs, and so in our customers that have maybe the oldest version and they're also like evaluating trying to move to the newest version, I think their support is like 3 minor versions, and so they will potentially have to run 2 versions of Helm.
Okay. I know like Gateway, I think, was trying to be the Gateway networking project was trying to be accommodating of like people running more clusters. And so I think they settled on like 5 minor versions, which was like a year plus a couple. But 2 years is obviously 6 minor versions.
Yeah.
And then if people aren't moving off of the oldest one until like a month or 2 or 3 after it hits EOL, you might conceivably even encounter 7. I was just curious how, if you were shipping stuff that felt that pain, or if it was mostly like ecosystem stuff that you were trying to advise customers on what to do.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely like we don't try. I don't think we make great efforts in the things that we ship to support. Like we don't require anyone, you know, our logging stack, we don't require them to support like 6 versions. We just say, as long as you have a version that continues to support the oldest version and you have a version that supports the newest version, you know, those can be different versions. And they tend to like, most of them, they'll support 3 releases and then they sort of move on and sort of roll that window forward or something along those lines.
Okay. I mean, three releases is kind of the norm, because that's the open source support window, and that's the cadence at which like a deprecated API will exist for another 3 releases. So you can kind of straddle 3 releases and be confident about the APIs you're using, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay. There's more questions in the chat if you want to jump in there.
Are there version bumps to fix CVE of dependent? I mean, all of the individual components like etcd, I think all of our supported versions are on the same version of etcd at this point. So yeah, we will certainly bump etcd to pick up, you know, a new patch version of 3.5 or whatever. And you know, it's sort of taken on a case-by-case basis. We would generally not bump like across a minor version to pick up fixes if possible. But certainly like if etcd 3.5 goes EOL and we think that we can support etcd 3.6 on all of our versions, we would evaluate moving them forward.
Okay.
I'm curious if you talking about Go versions, like if the stuff that we've done in the past year to track the Kubernetes changes that were needed to update to pick up a new Go version,
Yeah.
like have you made use of that in saying like we're supporting 3 older versions, we need to update Go, so we're going to take these, you know, CI and Lint and bug fixes back 3 versions? Or is Red Hat like maintaining a Go, like does Red Hat update Kubernetes to use new Go versions, or does it update old Go versions with new Go fixes?
Yeah. We thus far we have continued just to patch Go. We intend to change that starting with all the releases that are, you know, support 121 and later. And so we intend to start using the wonderful work that you guys have done to minimize the burden there.
Yeah, I was hoping that had helped you. Yeah, it'd be good to get experience report or signal if you find that useful, that's good to know. If you find that lacking in some way, that would also be really good to know.
I don't think there's any shortcomings, but it's also a situation where Red Hat as a whole, we can't give up on supporting a Go version until all of the things that we ship have moved off. And so we're taking the strategy of do it first with Cube, because you guys have figured out what looks like a sustainable pattern, and then work to advocate that across everything that Red Hat ships that's based on Go. And so that will take a while for us to realize the full value of this effort, I think.
I have seen
you
other. Oh, go ahead, Micah.
Yeah, do you ever find yourself with a project that has like a contention between like Jordan's question or like your example of Helm, where like it's only compatible with certain version releases of Kubernetes, and there's like a CVE in an old version of Helm, maybe not like in the Go tool chain where it's easier to update, but in, I don't know,
Actual.
yeah, like in a code or in a dependency or something. Like I pasted the like metrics server example in the chat. Like that's not Helm, but similar concept where say there's some dependency in Helm or something that has a CVE. Do you ever find those in? Do you ever find that case where you have like this, and what do you do about that?
We don't actually, as far as I know, we don't actually ship Helm, but that is
Okay.
a case where, you know, someone uses it, and I've had to help a customer through their need to have 2 different versions of Helm in their CI systems or whatever. I would have to look at the specific questions, but certainly, you know, maybe this goes back to like OpenShift is to some extent a big monolithic thing. Certainly logging stacks, metrics is sort of baked into the core product, so that's part of the monolithic payload. I don't know specifically if metric server is part of that, but we would just, if it's part of the core payload, we would just patch it in place.
So even like a third-party dependency of a metrics, like I'm just using metric server as an example though, but like of some component like that you were shipping where it was a a dependency where they're not going to do a new release, but they have some version, some dependency that's flagged for a CVE, you would go in, like, edit the code or whatever of that. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious how that surfaces for things like SBOMs and dependency scanners. Like, there's always like two aspects. One is, do we have real issues? Can we like actually fix the real issue? And obviously that's the more important thing to do. But then there's increasingly this second step of, does everybody agree that the issue is fixed? And there, like, you really lean on like scanning and SBOMs and like, oh, this thing has that dependency at that version. And if you're sort of fixing your versions of that code, those things are not going to understand that it's fixed. Have you run into that at all?
Yeah, certainly. And this is like Red Hat's thing, I would say. Like, Red Hat has traditionally, even in RHEL, we fix a lot of things without ever rebasing or bumping the versions. And so I don't understand the full implementation, but I understand that, like, the systems that, Oval or whatever it is that allow you to define CVEs and say they're fixed in this version. Those are the systems that we rely on, and we assert that, a fix has, even if we haven't bumped it to the new version, we have patched that fix. So we've gone through, and generally, like, anytime we fix any bug, there's a verification process. So someone tries to reproduce the issue, and CVEs and things like that. Usually there's example tests, so we're able to verify that the known test, it failed, we fix it, and now it's passing.
How do you communicate that to like to Jordan's point, like to scanners or whatever, that like, we fixed it, we didn't dump the version, but it's fixed? Like,
Yeah,
is that
I would have to, I believe it's, like, this is not my area of expertise, but I
Okay.
believe, like, Red Hat publishes Oval metadata or whatever the specs are that basically allow us to say, this CVE is fixed in these versions, it's not fixed in these versions.
okay? Yeah, I'm curious about the format. Just like, I know RPM has like update info.xml or whatever in the repo. There's not necessarily an analog for containers broadly yet.
Yeah, I'm interested in your experience, but I'm also like trying to sort of map what this might look like if Kubernetes started doing something similar. And like right now, we strictly disallow touching anything under vendor. Like, vendor has to match the real vendored content of those dependencies at those versions, and it's checksummed, and like, that's a really good property currently.
Mm-hmm.
So if older versions of Kubernetes had dependencies that had vulnerabilities that weren't going to be fixed, and we couldn't in a reasonable way update to like new versions of those dependencies, minor bumps or whatever, like, I think we would be limited to forking those, creating Kubernetes SIGs repos that were downstream of those, so that we were actually pointing to real content that could be checksummed and scanned and versioned. And so I was just trying to, if you have like a person that you could sort of point at this question, I'd be curious, like, how much of that burden you found that to be.
And SBOMs are sort of a new thing since, where Red Hat's come up, and I know that we're looking at that, so I'll try to find someone, Jordan.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Thanks.
And yeah, there are a lot of forks to maintain that we support, 6 or 7 versions at any given time. Let me just check the chat, see if there's anything that I missed.
I think that was caught up.
Yeah. Well, cool. I appreciate the discussion, and hopefully this was useful to everyone.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. That was really, really cool. I think a lot of good discussion on that too. So we've got like 3 minutes left. I can start this topic off and we can handle it asynchronously. Last time we met, we went through and captured a lot of topics that we thought might be good on a survey. And I started a Google form for that. And I can share that now. So I went through and we've got a lot in here. And I tried to bold the things that I had captured so far in what a survey might look like. I think there's a lot of work that needs to happen on it still, but I thought we could start by trying to capture some regulatory, environmental information. Do you have regulatory constraints? Are you using a managed Kubernetes? What's the oldest? What's the newest you're using, just to kind of get some demographic information? And then we can start with getting into the how difficult is upgrading for you? Do you do it or not? And then kind of branch off of that. These questions might not be super needed, but I think it's useful data points. One thing I was going to include today, but I forgot to drop into the agenda. The Prod Readiness team does a survey every year, and this is one of the data points they capture. What's the oldest version? What's the newest version you're running? And it's kind of interesting to see. And John just added those into the community repo. So I'll drop a link into the LTS chat so everybody can take a look at the PDF snapshots for those. But like the data there shows that a lot of people are using unsupported versions. Like of the people that responded, more than 50% in the last survey were running something that was unsupported. So like what at that time it was 123 and earlier. I think there are still really good questions to ask. Why is that the case? What is holding people up? So I tried to capture what we had discussed in a mix of free-form text and checkboxes. So it looks kind of like this right now if we preview it. So here's the questions on what info your environment. Describe your ideal upgrade process just to get some free-form text going. How often do you do it? Do you upgrade to patch releases, minor releases? What do you upgrade your clusters for? And then this list of items that we had kind of called out before. What are your biggest challenges and blockers? And then another free form. If it was perfect, what would prevent you from upgrading more regularly or keep you from upgrading, period? So I started this. Again, I think it needs a lot of attention and eyes before we share it more broadly. I think I added everybody. Here we go. I'll add you as collaborator, so you should be able to edit it. I thought I had done that, but sorry. Okay, cool. So everybody should get access to that now. And again, I took questions that were in here, and the ones that I bolded, I tried to represent to the survey. I know at the bottom we had a lot of terms we wanted to include. I did not do that yet. And I think that the community is using SurveyMonkey now to do surveys, not Google Forms, but I thought this was just a good place to capture it, and we can translate it over to whatever format that needs to go out as contributor experience helps us send a survey out. Okay. But so we're at time now. If everybody could take a look at that, and then we could discuss it next time, or asynchronously in chat, that would be, or in Slack, that would be really useful. All right. Any questions before? Yeah. Do we want to set a date for when we get this sent out? I think we should send it before KubeCon or around KubeCon if we can. So we could take a look at it at the next meeting and maybe finalize it. We can work on getting it sent, have it available for KubeCon. I think that would be really ideal. We can get it in front of a lot of eyes. The Microsoft keynote is going to be a pitch for participating in Working Group LTS. So I'll put a slide with a QR code to it or something, so we can make it easy to see. Are we doing a LTS KubeCon meeting? I think that would be really cool. I forgot to submit something to Contributor Summit. I did submit a maintainer track session that got accepted for this, so we can use that as a meeting if we want to. I also asked in the Contrib Summit chat yesterday if it was too late to submit requests for like just general meetings, not like presentations, but like having space, so we could do that. And I think that there was an LTS session from some folks at VMware to talk about what they're doing for awareness. So we can copy that off the schedule and put it into a thing. If we meet, then yes, we can do it remotely. We did that with SIG release. I think it worked really well. I have an iPad and I've got some microphones that I'll bring with me, and we did pretty good audio for the SIG release.
Show.
That's right. Just need a bot to like drive the iPad around for people. That'll be cool. All right. Well, hope everybody has an uneventful Tuesday. Doesn't have any major problems to deal with.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. That was really cool.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.